What's like the new chocolate?
Are we recording? Oh yeah, it is. We are recording.
Okay, so sorry, okay, so first there's a guy, there's a woman, right? There's a man and a woman. So the woman thinks actually it's not that scary, there's a word here. Then after that, then the man is just looking on expectantly. So this is what guys think. Guys think that it's about having girls in your pocket.
Sorry, Nick.
And it's about running bananas, and then you have sex 8 days a week. So actually, after they got married, right, then they went to Paradise Farm to experience it. So they thought that it can happen anytime, anywhere, and sex is when everything comes together. Okay. So where did the most there we go. So this part they thought it would be passionate and romantic and hot and heady, but actually they found out that it's actually a hairy situation. That one is nothing. And more than that, yeah. Then they thought that and let me think about something about it. Okay, yeah. So after that, then it also leads to a lot of sleepless nights, right? And they thought that there'll be a lot of fun times in fertile places, but like the vineyard, right? But actually, the only thing that's guaranteed, right, is pregnancy and more children. So yeah, that's it.
Too creative. I asked for one image, okay? Out of story to tell. Next! I think the hairy situation, Next, picture!
It boosts your health. It's never convenient because if you need to have sex, you need to go to a room, you need to get a condom, you get everything, so it's never convenient. It's living it up. You gotta live up to sex. It's the importance of family. Family builds, to build family, you need to have sex. It's great! It's high in flavor, low on guilt. It's spice up your life. Healthy mind. It's all about sex. It makes a difference. It's a maintenance clinic. It makes boys to men, so all of you who have not had sex are still boys. You are still boys. It's not a feeling. You can get every day. Caring for body and mind. You must always be vigilant when you talk about sex. You overload your senses when you think about sex. It's a joint venture because a boy and a girl, I mean a man and a woman. You must be 24/7 always ready for sex, and you like it. It's the center of world history. And sex is not about bullseye, man. You got to hit the right spot. It's the essence of romance. It's a term life insurance coverage. You must be well done, because it's part of public service. You have to be dynamic, engaging, and must be brilliant and classic. So you got to try it, man. And what it takes to be faithful so they can be part of this family. Thank you.
This is funner than I expected, but it's clear that you're confused. Next. Who's next? Okay, David, your group. Okay, come here. Don't be shy, I'm going to short of time.
Okay, sex from Sunday to Saturday. It's a passion that leads to promotion. And it's a dream that is praiseworthy. Share. It's a shared joy and you will end up with double joy. Yeah. It's good, big and fun, and you'll be amazed. Yeah, good. Yeah, that tickle your taste buds. So when you have sexy ass and sexy butts, sex is love is orange, right? And you end up having mom and dad with babies. Sizzling hot where when it's sizzling hot. Yeah.
Makes me feel very insecure walking in front of you. Are you checking out my butt or what? Okay, this group. Okay, this group.
Wait.
I shall not comment about the rise in shooting. Last group.
Okay, everyone, we think that every group is a bit misguided. We have the misguided stuff here, we have the good biblical stuff. We do the good stuff.
You're the wrong church.
Sex is a labor of love, it's a treasures, should happen during marriage. It all adds to more. This one you see family photo, right? So it's all in the context of family, marriage. This one also very nice family, never a dull moment. So these are the good stuff lah. Then these are the weird stuff. Some of this stuff doesn't reflect our beliefs, okay? Getting rid of unwanted kilos in just 29 minutes. This one, freeing yourself, it's always on. It's a secret, not told, you have to experience it yourself. Let's play truth or dare, now we can roll around in our underwear. Easter love is a great escape. What is this? Ryan Gosling. Yes. So I said, the first thing I said when I walked onto set was, hey, suck my.
Wow, Kim Chu! Make this topic holy!
Okay, please ignore the rubbish that's coming out. Okay, sex is.
Go Kim Chu!
Sex is guaranteed lose up to 10 kg. Sex helps to spice up your life. Sex. Resisting temptation is difficult. Is the secret of sleeping well as told by Bell. Secret of sleeping well, you know, after you have sex when you sleep well.
I didn't sleep well last night, you know.
I guess you. Sex is taking a break, touching moments, absolutely fabulous. And 2 times the fun when you have 3 kids.
Can you say with Dato please?
And there's a jumping head.
That's all very excited.
Sex is sparks in your marriage.
Yeah.
And it's full of wonders, and you explore and learn stuff, and you have pleasure and guilty pleasures.
How much time do I have, Caleb? I think I need more time. It looks like there are a lot of people, right? Okay, be more comfortable. Alright, so from just all those sharings, it's clear that we have different ideas of sex. So let's take a look at this clip and what some people think about sex, okay?
I'm not a virgin anymore. There's no going back.
You just got a divorce after 10 years of marriage. You can't expect me to just stop.
We're just fooling around. We don't go all the way.
Come on, I'm in my physical prime. It's unhealthy to deny myself.
We're not ready for marriage yet, but we're ready for the next step in our relationship.
Look, it's not like I'm not cruising bars or something. I'm in a committed relationship.
Come on, I'm married. Why?
It's just sex.
Everyone I know is doing it.
What goes on behind closed doors in my own home is no one's business but my own.
It's just a joke email my buddy sent me. It's just a video.
I'm just looking for love.
It's just sex.
The church tells us not to.
Those were rules created thousands of years ago before birth control, when life expectancy was, what, 40?
The world says it's okay. I mean, we use protection. You know what? It's really just between me and my boyfriend.
It's just sex.
If I'm looking for a commitment for the rest of my life, I just want to be sure that he's the one.
It's perfectly normal behavior. Come on, it's sex. It's not a sin. I mean, it's not like we're committing murder.
God created sex, right? So what's wrong with it? It's just sex.
I'm not a virgin anymore.
You got a divorce after 10 years of marriage. You can't expect me to stop.
It's just sex.
So what's wrong with it?
It's just sex. Is it just sex? See, this is what the prevailing culture, the culture's view, okay, of sex. It's just sex. Sex is like an appetite. You need to fulfill it. You're hungry, you eat. You're thirsty, you drink. You feel horny, you have sex. But is it just sex? Recently, I read this blog article, right, about this lady who waited till she got married to have sex. And she says she regretted it. She says on the first night of the wedding night, I was in the toilet crying, feeling so shameful. She said, I wish that I experimented. And then that's basically the purpose of the whole article, right? She says that we should go and experiment about sex. So we see towards single people, right, all kinds of views about sex, the issues about sex, but sex is not just a problem for the single people. Either you have too much sex or waiting too much for sex. It is also a problem for married people. Not too long ago, I shared with you this morning, I was doing premarital counseling and this guy says, yeah, once I get married, every 2 days I have sex. And his wife to me looked horrified. And I laughed. I said, well, if you can get it once a week, you'll be lucky. And it was his turn to look horrified. But you see, all of us have different expectations and we anticipate. And finally we get to do it, right? Because of all these wrong expectations, wrong ideas, we could be let down. And also because of the different needs, different sex drive, sex can become a conflict, an issue of conflict between marital relations. So about last year we gathered a group of 5 or 6 couples to go through this course called The Art of Marriage. Okay, so we're discussing about marriage and came to the topic of sex. And we divided the group into 2, okay? Some were going to get married and just married. And another group was married for more than 10 years. And so that group in my living room, talking, the just married one, when they talk about sex, there's so much fun and laughter and And then when the scene turns to where my group is more than 10 years, it's just and then we start talking about kids and church. And all kinds of things under the sun except sex. Because sex is that huge elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. And then we get it together, and one of the girls who just got married, she says, you know what? It's like a chore, you know. Where did you come from? And then she added, but it's so unfair. We waited till we get married to have sex. It's supposed to be fun and exciting. So we asked the question, what is the purpose of sex? Alright, and today as we look at this Song of Songs, we're going to the second portion of it. Talk about sex, lies, and covenant ties. Yesterday I showed you this structure of the book. Okay, we were here, and today we're talking about chapter 3 to 5, which is really the climax of the whole book. As you look at how the book is structured, okay, this is called a chiastic structure for those of you who missed it. And right in the center, the first and last section has similar themes. The second last has themes. So the Hebrew author is really focusing on the wedding scene. Thematically, according to Tommy Nelson, okay, on top, the first section is about courtship, and from there we look at the principles of dating yesterday. Now the couple, Solomon and his wife, they have reached their wedding and their honeymoon at last. And then chapter 5 onward will be the maturation of the marriage, the conflicts, how to resolve it with more sex, and then finally goes to the epilogue, how love began, which we'll look at tomorrow. So you don't want to miss the session tomorrow, you know. If you miss it, you will think that I'm all talking only about sex and dating and masturbation and all that. So that wouldn't look too good on me, okay? So you must come tomorrow. Okay, the purpose of sex, we are looking at two scenes. First for the wedding night and after the wedding. And we said first, sex binds covenant ties. Marriage is not a contract, it is a covenant. And God created sex to bind the covenant ties. When you look at chapter 4, okay, it is really fascinating. Okay, I told you I started studying this book in April, so it's been 7 months. And I'm so excited to share because it's so amazing. Okay, but it's not only amazing, there's a lot of hot stuff, you know. Hotter than the 50 Shades of Grey. You don't know about the book? Yes. Latest, hottest best-selling book flying off the shelf at hotcakes. About some bondage, sex. And you know who are the people that are buying the book? Women. Just the other day I was in MRT, a packed MRT station. You know, in the morning, you're like, squeeze out to a person. So I try not to do other things and just observe. And I look around, there are two random ladies, they were reading the book with that. I was like, oh wow, there must be something in the book, I should go and read it. What's it all about? But today what we're reading, I think, is going to be hotter than what the 50 Shades of Grey would say. But you know, you look at this outline of chapter 4, basically, they got married, the wedding ceremony is over now, they are getting ready to make love. 1 to 14 is prelude, basically the foreplay. And the Hebrew is interesting, okay? He talks about her, he describes her, and then he stops at his first object of desire. And then he pauses there and he exclaims, oh, awesome! And then he moves on to describe and he stops at the second object of desire. And then the next one is the consummation of the marriage. Now, can you guess which are Solomon's two objects of desire? And give a hint, okay? It is the mountain of myrrh in the locked rock garden. Okay, whatever it means, okay? So let's take a look and see what it means. Someone drew what Solomon described in chapter 4, okay? Your eyes are like doves. Your hair is like a flock of goats. Your teeth are like a flock of ewes. Your lips are like scarlet thread. Your temples are like a slice of pomegranate. Your neck is like a tower of David, and your breasts are like two fawn gazelle. I don't know to appreciate what Solomon is saying. A few things we need to know. First, we need to understand matter first, okay? Second is euphemism, especially sexual euphemism. It's basically a nicer way to say something not so nice. Like say, I'm going to a restroom. Well, you're going to poop or pee, right? But it's just a nicer way of saying it. The other one I talked about yesterday, the double entendre, where it describes a scene, but there's something really deeper into it. Right? So we need to put on those lenses, and we see what he actually means. Chapter 4, verse 1 and 2, it says, how beautiful you are, my darling. How beautiful you are. Your eyes are like dust behind your veil. Your hair is like a flock of goats that has descended from Mount Gilead. Okay, so the eyes are like dust behind the veil. So she's still having a wedding veil on. And so it's a bit hidden, mysterious, and heightens his desire. So Solomon is describing his bride. And then he says, you know, this goat thing coming down from Mount Gilead, okay, it's not goats, but just imagine Mount Gilead, you know, it's snow-capped, it's white, and all these black mountain goats are coming down just as a whole flock, so it's a cascading effect. Okay, so it's basically saying that she has nice black hair, okay? And then he continues, your teeth are like a flock of newly shorn ewes which come out from their washing, all of which bear twins, and not one among them has lost a young. What's he saying? Basically, he's saying that your teeth is white and complete, right? Because they've just washed and they are twins, none of them are lost. So he's saying, right, you have nice, complete teeth. Now, what kind of compliment is that? And not only I think the dentists among us will appreciate teeth, right? The rest, Gladys, right? Like, the rest of us teeth, huh? Now you must understand, back then oral hygiene wasn't so good, okay? And teeth are important. I remember I was in the army, we went to Taiwan for training, right? And then every time during R&R, when the taxi stops, right, there'll be these sexily dressed girls called the beetle nut girl. They sell beetle nut. I can't remember what's Chinese, what is it called, but you know, you chew like tobacco. So they walk up to your car to sell it, and as they come towards the car, I said, wow, quite sexy, right? Just suddenly they open their mouth. Because they chew the beetle nut, it's all red, and after a while it rots. And so it's important to have good oral hygiene, and that's what Solomon is saying. He said, oh, you're complete and white. Maybe he's a dentist, I don't know, but... Okay, let's continue, okay? How he's describing, he says, your lips are like scarlet thread, your mouth is lovely, and your temples are like a slice of pomegranate behind your veil. Your neck is like the Tower of David, which built with rows of stones on which there hung 1,000 shields, all the round shields of mighty men. Wow, what does that look like? I guess, you know, he talks about lips, he wants to kiss her lips, and then suddenly, is she African beauty? You know, some of them have those long rings to lengthen their neck because they think it's beautiful. And then maybe she has some extra thing here, like 2 slices of stuff. And maybe it looks like this. Okay, this guy in 1978, he drew this slices of pomegranate and nice long neck. Okay, maybe Solomon has a warped sense of beauty. After all, he has 1,000 wives and concubines, right? So, you know, who knows what he's thinking about. But basically, alright, when he talks about pomegranate, this basically is red. He's saying that she's blushing. And imagine this, Solomon is describing his wife, is touching her where what he's describing. And so she's blushing. Why is she blushing? Because she's standing before him naked for the first time. Although she's naked, she's not shy or afraid, or she stands like a Tower of David. It means she just stands there, even though she's shy because it's the first time, but she's unashamed. She's naked and unashamed. Now what does that remind you of? Good. Adam and Eve. Which is what we'll look at tomorrow, that really the wedding of Solomon points back to the first wedding in the Garden of Eden of Adam and Eve, and points forward to the ultimate wedding where we as the bride of Christ will attend the final supper of the Lamb. Okay, this story of Solomon is about sex, it's about marriage, but it's also about Christ and us. Okay, but we'll talk about it tomorrow. But essentially, this is what's happening. She's standing there. You know, yesterday when we read about this woman, right, this Shunammite, she is active in her role. She's not passive. You know, she articulates a desire, but they are full of restraint, right? She articulates, oh, I really want it. I want raisin cakes and pomegranates. And okay, those of you who missed it, too bad. Anyway, you know, but she stops. After she says, I want to be cradled by you in that position, and then she says, but, oh, don't arouse sexual love until the right time. So she stops. But today it's like, no holds bar, okay, you need to pay attention. Okay, so he describes her, she's really nice, and he reaches the first object of his desire. He says, verse 5, he says, your breasts, your 2 breasts are like 2 fawns, twins of a gazelle which feed among the lilies, until the cool of the day, when the shadow flees. I will go my way to the mountain of myrrh, and to the hill of frankincense. You're altogether beautiful, my darling, and there's no blemish in you. Looks at her breasts! And his chest. I couldn't resist that. breasts, it says they're symmetrical and perfect. And there's this commentator that says, you know, the twin gazelles, when they feed on the lilies, basically they feed this way, right? So their butts and tails are up, and it looks like two protruding nipples. Okay, once again, I said, these commentators that I've been studying out, they are not sexual perverts, okay? These really are Hebrew experts. So I think there's something there. And basically Solomon looks at her breast, he likes it, he says that you are all together beautiful. And in the Hebrew here, he pauses. He paused to do what? To proclaim. He says, to proclaim. Okay, he says, you are all together beautiful. And so, notice what he's doing. He's just taking his time. Okay, just describing, and there's a lot of restraint on his part. And so this guy called Gary Smalley, the guy who brought men are like microwave and women like crock pots, okay? Because men is like, just now they said 24/7, 8 times a day or something, or 8 times a week, I don't know. He said, as far as I'm concerned, Solomon is doing it right. Men can have sex just about any time and appreciate it in just about any form. However, for a woman, she heats up slowly and needs time and tenderness to ready for sexual intercourse. And so I'm just amazed he's doing it right with so much sexual restraint. I wish I had his restraint on my wedding night, you know. So I've been waiting for 4 years. I got a colleague of mine to go and buy a lingerie for my wife. And I was like, okay, sorry. That didn't happen. But the point is, I didn't have as much restraint as Solomon, okay? Yeah, he's just so cool about it, taking his time, describing her. And then he goes on to proclaim, say, oh, come with me to Lebanon, my bride. May you come with me to Lebanon, journey down from the summit of Amana, from the summit of Sharon to Hermon, from the dens of the lions, from the mountains of leopard. You have made my heart beat faster, my sister, my bride. You have made my heart beat faster with a single glance of your eyes. See what he's doing? He reaches the breast and he spends time there and he proclaims and exclaims, oh, wow. And then he continues. He says, how beautiful you are, my love, my sister, my bride. How much better is your love than wine. And the fragrance of your oils than all the kind of spices. Your lips, my bride, drip honey, honey and milk are under your tongue. So clearly they are in a deep kissing. The honey under the tongue and the fragrance of your garments, the fragrance of Lebanon. Continues to his second object of desire. It says, a garden lock is my sister, my bride. A rock garden lock, a spring sealed up. Now, the ancient Near Eastern Texas, which is the literature written at the time of Song of Solomon, these images like rock gardens, spring sealed spring, they are highly erotic images. Even in Proverbs 5, when we saw yesterday briefly, it talks about sex in this manner. So, what is this? Garden that is locked. She's saying she's a garden that is locked. Your shoots are like orchid of pomegranates with choice fruits, henna and nut plants, nut and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, with all the trees of frankincense, myrrh, aloes, along with all the finest spices. You are a garden spring, a well of fresh water and streams flowing from Lebanon. Okay, basically he's describing the vagina, the ultimate place of lovemaking. And if you see here, he engages all 5 senses of sight, smell, taste, touch and sound. The sound, of course, is in the Hebrew, but it is so descriptive. So compared to the scene we saw yesterday where she described about her desires, that was so mild compared to this, right? This one is fully engaged. She's ripe, she's ready, and she's a garden spring of well fresh of water streaming from Lebanon, whatever your imagination has to do in that verse, I don't know. And what does she do? Guess what she does? She says, awake, O north wind, come, wind of the south. Make my garden breathe out fragrance, and let its spices be wafted abroad. May my beloved come into his garden and eat its choice fruits. What's she saying? She's saying, come on Solomon, enough of the foreplay, come and take me. Right? Is it not? He's describing and he stops there and he's so amazed and she's all ripe and he says, come on, make my garden breathe out fragrance, let its spices walk. May my beloved, she's inviting him into her garden. And he says, she spreads herself to eat its choice fruit. Okay, I didn't kind of read it, do it myself, okay? I did a lot of research on this, just to be sure. And then Solomon says, I've come to my garden, I've gathered, I've eaten, I've drunk. Can you see the progression? It's complete. My system, my dried myrrh, my balsam, honeycomb, honey, wine, milk. This is called a merism, pairs. Like heaven and earth means everything in between, totality, right? So he has eaten the honeycomb and the honey, means everything. So with the verbs you see, gathered, come, gathered, eaten, drunk, basically they're intercourse. He had taken his bride fully, totally, and then there's interjection. I told you yesterday in biblical Hebrew, in poetic Hebrew, there's always this interjection of a third party, and it says, eat, friends, drink, and invite deeply old lovers. So basically, they consummated their wedding. And so the idea of this is the description of their first night together. And let's see what Tim Keller says about this. I like what he says. He says, sex has covenant-making power. Okay? In the midst of sexual passion, you naturally want to say extravagant things such as, I will always love you. Even if you're not married, and you may find yourself very quickly feeling marriage-like ties, feeling like the other person has obligations to you. But that person does not if you're not married. He does not even have to call you back. And this incongruity leads to jealousy and hurts. So if you have sex outside of marriage, you have to steel yourself against sex's power to soften your heart toward another person and make you more trusting. The problem is that eventually sex will lose its covenant-making power for you, even if you're married one day. Ironically, sex outside of marriage eventually works backward, making you less able to commit and trust another person. And it's so true, right? This is only the example I shared with you, a friend of mine. You know, because the first few times you have sex with his girlfriend, you know, there's intimacy, but by and by it just becomes because it's about his pleasure and satisfy, and that's about it. And it says it's the most, after you climax, it's the most empty feeling in the world. You know, how did sex become like that? Because you have to steel yourself against the covenant-making power of sex, and eventually it loses that power and just becomes an appetite that needs to be fulfilled. You're hungry, you eat, you're thirsty, you drink, if you're horny, you have sex. So, in the wedding night, we see that sex binds the covenant ties. But subsequently in the marriage, you know, we have sex. Sex in the marriage renews covenant ties. Okay? Let's look at Keller first before we go to scripture. Keller says in the Old Testament, there are often covenant renewal ceremonies. When God entered into a covenant relationship with his people, he directed that periodically there be an opportunity for them to remember the terms of the covenant. At first reading it together and then recommitting themselves to it. This was crucial if the people were to sustain a life of faithfulness. This periodically God reminds them of their covenant. Okay? This is called covenant renewal. It is the same for the marriage covenant. When you get married, you make a solemn covenant with your spouse. That is a wonderful thing. But as time goes on, there's a need to rekindle the heart and renew the commitment. There must be an opportunity to recall all that the other person means to you and give yourself anew. Sex between a husband and wife is a unique way to do that. According to the Bible, a covenant is necessary for sex. It creates a place of security for vulnerability and intimacy. But though a marriage covenant is necessary for sex, sex is also necessary for the maintenance of the covenant. It is your covenant renewal service. I think it's a really interesting way of putting it. But let's go to the text first, okay? So after they got married, they have sex. It continues, it says, I was asleep. My heart was awake. A voice, my beloved was knocking. Open to me. The picture is Solomon is outside knocking on the door. It says, open to me, my sister, my darling, my dove, my perfect one. You know, usually you just call her my sister, my brother. Here it's like 4 times, okay? For my head is drenched with dew, my locks with the dead of the night is outside. She says, I've taken off my dress. How can I put it on again? I've washed my feet. How can I dirty them again? So the scene is that he's knocking on the door, saying, I want to come in. He says, oh, but you know, I'm really bad. I wash my feet. I don't want to open the door. He says, my beloved extended his hand through the opening and my feelings were aroused. What? So he's not outside, somehow he bangs his way through and she's aroused. So there's something more to it, okay? So let's go back and see. He says open to me. Essentially, he wants to have sex. And so, you know TME, right? My sister, my darling, my dad, my perfect. When guys want to have sex, I tell you, they'll tell you anything you want to hear, okay? And then continues, she says, I wash my feet. We have talked about feet being an image for female genitalia. So basically, she doesn't want to have sex, she doesn't have the mood. But he extended, the word extended NIV is thrust his hand. His hand, if you look at Isaiah 56, it's translated, you have loved their bed, look on their manhood. God is saying to Israel, their manhood, the word is yad, which is hand. In the Old Testament dictionary, it says yad means forearm, and metaphorically it means side, back, part, possession, power, monument. What's that? So basically, what Solomon is doing is that, okay, she's not in the mood, but he just does it. And then she says, my feeling for aroused, so she says, okay, let's do it. I arose to open to my beloved, she says, my hand dripped with myrrh, my fingers with liquid myrrh on the handles of the bolts. Okay, she reaches for something. I opened to my beloved, she says, I want. But my beloved had turned away and gone. My heart went out to him and he's still around, he's not disappeared, okay? I searched for him, but I did not find him. I come to him and did not answer him. And what follows is a kind of weird scene where she's talking to other women about Solomon, where he's gone, you know. She couldn't find him. So the idea is that, okay, he wanted sex, she didn't want, eventually she wanted, but he's kind of pissed off and says, okay, no, I don't want. So she's not looking for him. And okay, you may look at me and think it's very strange, you know, single people, but if you're married, I tell you, you perfectly understand the scene. I've heard it so many times, okay, that because of this clash of sexual needs, sometimes the husband wants, the wife don't want, and then when they cannot communicate, by the time the wife says, okay, then the husband says, I want it to be like that, you know, it shouldn't be like that. Just a few months ago on the internet, there's this guy who he had this Excel spreadsheet of the number of times his wife rejected him from having sex. I don't know if you heard about it. And when she went away on a business trip, he emailed the file to her and she just posted it online and went viral. Okay, so she says, you want sex? No sex, headache. Want to have sex? I'm watching TV. I want to have sex, I wake up early. So the husband was so frustrated and posted online. But what I found most interesting was in the forum. The people started commenting, and to me, it perfectly fits this scene. And I wish 10 years ago someone told me about it. It would have saved me a lot of heartache and communication issues with my wife. And she goes out to look for him and she couldn't find him. Okay, Smalley again says, men usually have a desire for frequent sex, greater variety in forms of sexual play. Women usually want a bit more emotional connectedness through tender touch, conversation, and prefer more consistent love-making techniques. Of course, he also says, right, for women, love-making begins in the morning. Now, this is only a generalization that men have higher sex drive. When I was part of the pastor's network, I told you this morning about the sexual network I was part of. You know, we're talking about this, and then one of the guys said, oh, I think my wife has a higher sex drive than me. And all of us looked at him and said, you're blessed. Okay, so this is only a generalization, okay? But, okay, I took out this clip. Okay. So she goes out and looks for him, okay? She says she's describing Solomon. My beloved is dazzling and ruby, outstanding among 10,000s. His hands are like rod set with pearl. His adamant is carved ivory, inlaid with sapphires. His legs are pillars of alabaster set on pedestals of pure gold. His appearance is a Lebanon choice as the cedars. She describes Solomon like a Greek god, right? 6 packs, alabaster feet. Trevor Longman, which is another Hebrew scholar, this is carved of ivory, probably a reference to ivory tusk, and it's an imagery for the male sexual organ. So when she's describing Solomon, because you know he's not very happy, right? So she's just trying to reconcile and she's describing how attractive he is. And just as graphic as Solomon was describing her, she was equally as graphic describing her husband. So later, chapter 6 and 7, they make up for sex. So the point of this is sex renews covenant ties because you're forced, you don't have sex. So you're forced to confront all the issues, all the anger, all the misunderstanding before you can have sex. And so in that sense,
you need to kind of clear up your relationship. And that is the purpose of this so-called sex renews covenant ties. The problem with sex, okay, is this. That singles are having too much sex and the married people are having not enough of it. This is a quote from one of my friends as part of their network. He's a staff member of the mega church. His ministry is family life ministry is 2,000 people. And so when I ask him what's the problem with sex in your church, he looks at me and says, single people are having too much sex and the married people are not having enough of it, and so I'm having a headache. There is a problem. As I said in the beginning, for people who are not married, the issue then is premarital sex. We want, we desire, we have all the misconception. And the funny thing is, once you get married, it's the other way around. The sex can't become a chore sometimes. And that is why we need to kind of correct our understanding of what sex is about. The purpose of sex first, for the wedding night, is to bind covenant ties. Okay, and an ongoing marriage after the wedding night is to renew covenant ties. But let us now look at then the theology of sex to kind of understand, and correct some misconceptions. It is just from Proverbs, you can read yourself. It's very clear that you have to give one another in marriage. So drink from your own cistern, basically don't go anywhere else. And then verse 18 says, let your fountain be blessed and rejoice with the wife of your youth. As a loving, kind, and graceful doe, let her breast satisfy you all time, be exhilarated always with her love. See, scripture is not ashamed to talk about breast, vagina, and all this kind of stuff. Okay, yeah, they use euphemistic terms. But because God created sex, okay? So the theology of sex, if you want to copy it down, the sex is a good thing, but it is not the ultimate thing. Sex is a good thing, but it's not the ultimate thing. It's great, but it's not ultimate. From the Genesis chapter, which you can see in your booklet, basically we look at the Genesis chapter and we kind of analyze what we can learn about sex. Just as yesterday we look at the other passage about singlehood and we see what we can understand about singlehood. So from this passage and in the Song of Solomon, we see firstly, the Song of Solomon is about Eden restored. I mentioned earlier, the image there is husband and wife. Husband and wife, they were naked and unashamed. And it brings to mind the image of the Garden of Eden before the fall. Here it talks about Solomon and Solomoness, that's the Shulamite, okay? The female version of Solomon. In Eden is Adam, Adama. Adam is man, Adama is woman. Okay, that was before he was called Eve. He called her Eve only after the fall. In the midst of nature, in the midst of creation. Here sex is celebrated, there it talks about sex is one flesh. So it's very clear that the author of this Song of Solomon, the reason is there is a reason, apart from just talking about sex and marriage. And the first session I talked about all the different ways of interpreting it. And tomorrow we'll delve into it a bit more. Here it's about Eden restored, okay? So first, we see that sex is good. God created, after everything he created, it's good, tough. And then he created man and woman, it's more tough. Very good. And we see then that sex is not just an appetite, and it is not dirty. Instead, I said the idea that sex is dirty didn't come from the church, even though in the West they keep blaming the church that the church has this, gave us this bad heritage that sex is bad. It actually came from the Greeks, who felt like the soul is good, the body is bad. Anything to do with the body is bad. It's just that the church inherited it, okay? So by scripture, it is not dirty. And this is important. Okay, I know somebody that has this idea, okay, and I don't know where it came from, her family, her upbringing, but at the end of the day, she refuses to have sex with her husband. Yesterday I told you it's the other way around. The guy, for some reason, after he had premarital sex often, and after they get married, he just don't want to have sex. But this is the other way around, and we found out that the idea is that she feels like sex is dirty. I don't know where it came from, but they didn't seek any help, and so by the time, it's too late. Because they decided enough is enough, they're going to get a divorce. So it's important for us to understand this concept. Sex is good. Sex is good. Sex is good. Oh, sorry. It's good. There's nothing to be ashamed of. It's not dirty. We need to reclaim all these terms, because if we don't, the culture will there's somebody who will speak into the culture and claim that. Okay, just like the idea of the rainbow. It's such a marvelous sign of God. The rainbow coming out of Noah, right? But now the culture is reclaiming the sign of the rainbow to mean something else. So what are we going to do? Not talk about it? No. We need to reclaim it. Sex is good. Sex is pleasurable. Structure of the songs 4:1 to 14 I talked about earlier. He's taking time for love making and foreplay. Focuses on object of desire. And then she responds. Earlier this morning I said, this is the secret to great sex. It's going to, this alone is worth your 10 fee, okay? For women, the secret is tenderness and time. For men, it's not orgasm, because men will have orgasm anyway. For men, the secret to great sex is responsiveness. Just look at the way she responds to him. She says, Solomon, enough. Come and take me. Because if you can make the man feel like, or your husband feel like, wow, he can excite you and be responsive, I tell you, even he dies without having another orgasm, you'll die a happy man, okay? So, if you're not married, tuck this away somewhere else, some part of your brain, and one day, remember what I said. It's mutual, it's not just for men, okay? The structure of the songs is very clear. There's an interplay between man and woman. She's not passive, she articulates a need and a desire. She initiates a conversation, so she's just as active. It's multi-dimension. When God created Adam was because Adam, he did name all the animals and then he felt alone. And God created him. It's about relationship. Okay, it's only in the context of fidelity, loyalty, and devotion that sex can be good. And so that gives us a challenge. Sometimes it's difficult because a lot of time for guys it's just you bend over, you don't have sex. Come up from above, you don't have sex. We can do it anytime, right? But for women, there's a lot more that goes into it. And because of this complication and this understanding, it becomes a huge issue. The hookup culture we talk about today, they try to do away with all this relationship, just meet for sex. Okay, but the research shows that those who are just in the hookup culture, they are not having more orgasms than the usual, sexual relationships. So it shows that it's not just about hooking up because they don't appreciate that sex is multi-dimensional. Next, sex is holy. God created sex. He created sex set apart from marriage. In the creation account, there's duality. There's always sun and moon. Opposites, day and night. And then there's man and woman. Man is for woman, woman is for men. And sex is for them. So, holy needs to be set apart. It's something set apart and when God created and set apart. In songs, there's a frequent interplay of man and woman. They have equal part in it. And the idea of one flesh, that sex binds them. So we say sex is holy. So just now I asked you all to complete the sentence, right? Sex is ... So Taylor says, okay, we can skip over this. Finally, sex is ultimately worship. Okay, if you fill out that little dot, sex is ... because sex is worship. Everything we do in life is worship. But sex is because it's not about me, it's for you. There's mutual adoration that leads us to the adoration of the Creator. And that is worship. Okay? Now with this kind of background understanding, from the Genesis account, we see that, okay, this is what we learn from sex. And we need to then start to change some of our views towards sex. Because some of us, the way we grow up, feel sex is something we cannot talk about. It's good but cannot talk about. And then and unconsciously we feel it's dirty. Sometimes we feel like, don't know how, what should we do? But I think the scripture is clear that it talks about sex as God created it. It's good, it's good, it's good. Some of the lies that we talk about sex, lies and covenant ties, right? Some of the lies of our culture, there are many lies about sex, but one thing that we deal with today is pornography and masturbation. The main issue, this morning we said, the main issue about this is that sex is meant to draw us out from me to we, where you connect with somebody. But pornography and masturbation is about me. There was this two person called Ricardo and Cindy. Listen to the testimony before. They are ministry leaders on campus. So before they got married, Ricardo shared about his addiction to pornography. Okay, but both of them thought that he should be able to deal with it after they got married. Because Cindy was a really beautiful woman, right? It should not be a problem. But after they got married, it continued to be a problem. So eventually they went for counseling, and the pastor's wife looked at this Ricardo and says, "I don't understand. You just look at your wife, she's so beautiful, right?
why would you not want a real life beautiful woman and you want to turn to pornography? And Ricardo gave an answer which I felt was really insightful to the problem of pornography. He says, Cindy is complicated. Sometimes she has a bad day at work, she doesn't feel like having sex. Sometimes she's menstruating and we can't have sex. Sometimes she's not in the mood and we don't have sex. And when we have sex, I must think about her. But when I turn to pornography, it's all about me. I'm always super attractive and the women are always super responsive. And I think, wow, that answer is so insightful. It nails the problem of pornography on its head. It's about me. And that was not how God created men's sex to be. And because it's about me, even in sexual relationships, when we do not have this concept of we, continue to be about me, and soon then it becomes just an appetite that you need to fill because yeah, I'm hungry, it's about me, right? I need to eat. Now I'm horny, it's about me, right? I won't think whether you're in the mood or not. I just want to do it. So C.S. Lewis says, the real evil of masturbation would be that it takes an appetite which leads the individual out of himself to compete and correct his own personality in that of another and turns it back. Because when you don't have sex, I said earlier, you need to confront yourself with another person. You need to clear up the conflicts, the issues, the disagreements. You're faced to confront yourself and change. But then we take it and turns it on his back. It sends the man back to the prison of himself to keep his harem of imaginary brides. Among those shadowy brides, he's always adored, he's a perfect lover, and in the end they become merely the medium through which he increasingly adores himself. Of course, C.S. Lewis talked about masturbation, which I think also fits our context today on pornography. Sex is worship. Sex is not self-adoration, but mutual adoration, and ultimately the adoration of the Creator. Sex is worship. Have you ever thought about sex that way? Well, you can start thinking about it. Sex is worship. Because it's not about my needs. It's about mutual needs. And as you read the songs again, to me it's quite amazing how clear it is. How they adore one another and there's no shame between husband and wife. It's important to understand the theology of sex because there are issues that without proper understanding can lead to other bigger issues. So, a friend of mine with Focus on Family Singapore says that out of those who come for counseling, these are the three main problems that cause the sexual problems in a marriage. And these are all Christian people. The first is the difference in sex drive, which we talk about. There's not an understanding that sex is each of us are different. Okay, that we have different drives, and so there's misunderstanding, then there's anger, and then there's conflicts. So they come for counseling. The other is grievances, in-laws problems. One of the issues mentioned was that the men don't earn as much as the women, and so the women, over time, have grievances. Okay, and I don't know, it's kind of weird, but this is what I found out in those people come for the counseling. Because sex is multi-dimensional. It's not just me and you. There are a lot of other things involved: children, your mood, your in-laws, and all these that cause conflicts, and then you just cannot have sex. The third is pornography, and he said this that it's so graphic that it still sticks to my mind. I don't even know what I should say. He says that a lot of those Christian women come in with ripped anuses because their Christian husbands look at pornography and think sex is really good, and they try it out. And since as a result of that, those women feel so dirty that it not only destroys their sex life, it destroys their marriage. So when I heard that, I was like, oh man, God, you shouldn't have told me. It's stuck on me. But these are Christians in Singapore, right here amongst us, because there's a lack of understanding of the theology of sex. Sex, the Bible is not a sexual handbook, okay? You talk about some position, veiled references to oral sex and this and that, but it's not a sexual handbook. It's not going to tell you what position you need to go into, how many frequency of sex, but it gives you guidelines through theology, and that's why we need to kind of understand it. By understanding that, ultimately, that sex is a good thing. God created it, but it is not the ultimate thing. Because if sex is the ultimate thing, then why should I wait for marriage?
Why should I only have one partner, right? Multiple partners have sex as often as I want. But no, sex is not the ultimate thing. God is the ultimate thing. And because God is ultimate, that is why we're willing to live. Because God is ultimate, we understand that I surrender my sexuality to Him. So there are times where maybe, the one with the lower sex drive don't feel it. But because God is ultimate and we surrender our sexuality, we, number one, are free to say, I'm sorry, I just don't feel it. Or we are free to say, even though I don't feel it, I will meet your needs. Because God is ultimate and we have surrendered our sexuality, it means that the one with the highest sex drive who always wants sex would look at his partner and says that because it's mutual and it's because for you, I'm willing to say that no, even though I want it. Because God is ultimate, we surrender our sexuality to Him. It also means that as singles, it's okay not to have sex. We are not missing out on anything. God is not keeping this very short thing away from you and you are missing out because you're not having sex. Because this is exactly the idea of a lot of young adults these days. Not sure in Singapore, but definitely in the States. They think that because they're not having sex, they're missing out on something. But no, we can lead perfectly fulfilling lives without sex. Because God fulfills us. Because God is ultimate, sex is not. So, the theology of sex is a good thing, but it's not the ultimate thing. For myself, I went through this whole experience of sex from the thrilling part at the beginning, to it being a routine, to it being an issue of marriage where, it causes so much conflicts because we just don't know how to communicate. And then, but because we came to a point we realized that sex is not ultimate about God, we are able to surrender our sexuality to God. And as a result of that, we are able to kind of rediscover the sweetness and intimacy of sex. Because then I realized that, when my wife says no to me, she's not saying no to me. Okay? Because previously I felt when she says no, she's not in mood, she's rejecting me. And then she also feels like, I keep going to have sex, like she's busy other things or headache with children, I don't care, but it's not because I don't care. And we only came to this point, because we came to a point where we realized that we just cannot, this sex thing really gets in the way and it's affecting our relationship. And eventually we know that God is ultimate and we have to surrender ourselves to Him. And only when that happened, that it clicked. It took us almost 10 years to really learn about this lesson. Okay, to understand that it's something mutual. It's not rejecting one another. It's something good. And through that, through surrendering of our sexuality, I think there's a rediscovery of the intimacy that God gives. So, yesterday we said, it's good to know who you want to date, but it's better to know who Christ wants you to be. And it's best to surrender your life to God. And today is similar. Sex is good, sex is great, but it's not the ultimate thing. The ultimate thing is God, and that is why it is best to surrender our sexuality to God. You want to enjoy sex? The irony is only when we let go and surrender to God that we truly learn to enjoy it the way God is intended. And because it is meant, it is about marriage and security. But for my wife and I, we had time to explore and to learn and work through all the difficult issues. As I said, it took us 10 years, to really get to a point where I can say that I understand why God has sex. Previously, it's like just a need. Don't know why it needs to be fulfilled. Of course, I can say all the right things are, but internally my values were different. My concepts were wrong. So I hope, through this we talk about dating and sex, right? Tomorrow is really important. Okay, we need to talk about it tomorrow. You need to come, but what I'm trying to say is that ultimately it's not about dating. Ultimately it's not about sex. Ultimately it's about Christ. And so is every aspect of our lives. It's only when we surrender ourselves to God that we truly live the abundant life of God. Okay? So when you take out your picture and your card, I told you to divide into 3 sections. Yesterday you wrote one section. The section about yourself and your spouse, treat it seriously because, when I was doing this series, I realized that 20 years ago I described what my spouse looked like and we got answered the prayer and not answered the cooking part. But I just added, sorry. I just added it, okay? No, in 10 minutes. So, what I want you to do now is the second segment. You can write this down, 6 is good, but it's not.
Jake Miller. Now that we know Jake Miller started performing by...
to write a prayer to God. Okay, if there's space, copy this down. If not, just leave the space in the center, the second portion, as a prayer to God. Maybe some of us, we are caught up in the bondage of pornography, which we talked about this morning. And it can be a prayer that God would release you from that. Maybe some of us have misconceptions about sex. Maybe we feel that sex is dirty, we feel like we're not beautiful enough or not for sex. Right now, maybe some of us it's just a desire to keep pure for the Lord. Maybe some of us is to be able to give to one another openly. So just spend some time writing down. Maybe some of us, we're messed up. But then in Christ we find redemption. So these 2 days we talk about the good stuff, but the reality is most of us messed up. That's why you need to come to the Lord. But let's spend some time just writing down a prayer to God for this area of sexuality. The worship team, once you're ready, you can just come out. Take your time, right? Because once you're done,